Aloha, I'm Lyla Berg, and we're here at NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, ready to meet the people who inform, inspire, and impact our daily lives. Thank you for joining us on Island Focus. This is a beautiful building, and it's the Pacific Regional Center of NOAA.
Yes, it is, and it's the largest center for NOAA in the country, representing the entire Pacific region. We have about 650 NOAA employees in the building from all of our line offices.
So if we look at not only the building and the photographs, there's a lot of different areas of the ocean world that you deal with.
Sure, we say we go from the sun to the sea, and so everything from space weather prediction down to tsunami and weather, and of course fisheries, ocean exploration, all those types of things.
And from your perspective, what constitutes the Pacific Rim or the Pacific Basin that you serve?
Well, we really don't have a geographical limitation, so if various countries need us to provide support and there's funding from other agencies to do that, we will do that. But for the most part, it's the Pacific Islands and the U.S. affiliated Pacific Islands.
Mahalo for tuning into Island Focus and joining me in meeting Captain Choi of NOAA. Appreciate you being with us. And thank you for taking the time in your busy day.
Thank you for coming out today on this Valentine's Day.
Yeah, we have a little bit of time to meet you and find out a little bit more about NOAA. Can you explain what you do here?
Yeah, I'm the NOAA liaison to Indo-Pacific Command. So NOAA has a lot of intersections and is one of the interagency partners. We work with Department of Defense and the other interagencies. So I'm the NOAA representative at Pacific Command.
Now, when you graduated from Kamehameha schools, did you ever think that you would have such a long career around the world with an organization?
No, I didn't. I guess I was just lucky, to roll into something like this.
And so what is your job now? And I know that you've been in for 33 years. And what other roles have you had?
Well, I started, NOAA has a civilian component, which is the majority of the NOAA employees, and then we have a commissioned corps of officers. And the officer corps typically operates the vessels and the aircraft for NOAA with other assignments in between those operational assignments. So I've had, 30 years of that.
And in what sort of locations have you found yourself?
I found myself in Alaska, in Florida, in Maryland, Minnesota for 5 years, and now back here in Hawaii, which is great.
So if you would explain a little bit more about this building, it's pretty fabulous.
We have 15 offices all around the island, and we consolidated it all here on Ford Island. These two buildings, which are connected by this center section, which is brand new, are World War II era hangars. And so they were here during the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941.
It's a pretty snazzy building. You have some new ideas that you're vetting here as well.
Sure, as a science-based service organization and an environmental organization, this building is extremely environmentally planned out. It's a LEED Gold building, so it's energy efficient. And we have some unique systems. The cooling system is quite unique. And our lighting is very unique as well. Well,
I noticed that there's a lot of indirect lighting. Is that what you would call it?
Yes, we have a number of skylights and a lot of windows. And those skylights typically are really good at lighting right below the skylight. And to bring a little bit more out of it, we had these luminaires installed, and they spread the light out a little bit. And so that also reduces our energy costs.
You have a unique cooling system here as well.
Yes, we do. It's a saltwater cooling system. There's a well out back that goes on about 1,500 feet. It pumps cold seawater to the roof where it cools the air. And then that cold air sinks and the hot air rises, and that is our air conditioning system. Now, another unique aspect of that is that cooling system, the air in Hawaii is very moist, and so water condenses on those cold pipes. we collect that fresh water and we flush all of the toilets in the building with that fresh water.
Fabulous, so unique. If you had one message for the audience about the role that NOAA plays in the world, what might that be?
Well, NOAA is your premier environmental organization within the government, I would say, but I might be biased. We're trying to understand what goes on the planet with the oceans, with the atmosphere, our climate, all those types of things, and how that all works together. And if you can understand that properly, you can make skillful predictions on what could happen in the future.
Well, with all the conversation and dialogue and concern about climate change, NOAA has a very significant role to play in future decisions.
Yeah, even more so this day as we face some of the impacts that are already occurring and maybe to get an increase in severity. We have a large role around the world in making sure we have the very best information for our decision makers.
Well, thank you for taking the time to inform us a little bit more about NOAA.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, too, for being with us as we've been chatting with Captain Choy of NOAA. Mahalo for being with me today as I'm conversing with Hoku Kaʻaekuahiwi, who is with NOAA Fisheries. Glad you're with us. And really wonderful to meet you.
Thank you.
With such a beautiful Hawaiian name. It's not unusual that you would be working in this profession. What exactly is your role with the fisheries?
My role at NOAA Fisheries, I sit within the Marine National Monuments Program, and I help to oversee the large-scale marine protected areas in the Pacific under the U.S.'s jurisdiction.
So explain a little bit more about this monument.
Sure. Well, it's actually 4 monuments. The 4 of them make up about over 1 million square nautical miles of ocean. And so they're very pristine, unique areas that have a lot of natural and cultural resources that are rare, endangered, and specific to those places.
We don't always think about the ramifications, I guess, or the consequences of too much fishing or being on the ocean. What are you finding is the most rewarding part of your job?
It's definitely rewarding to be able to work with the broad spectrum of partners, but also with the community, and to be able to feel like you're giving back, but also taking into account working with scientists and different policy people and stakeholders to protect these places and their resources.
It must be challenging sometimes.
Definitely, yeah.
What is the greatest challenge that you have had to overcome?
Well, definitely, it is the best part of my job. It is also one of the hardest, and that's the balancing act between being in government, but also working with the community and this large plethora of stakeholders, and then also balancing your own passions within that.
How do you help people navigate through their values and their cultural beliefs?
That's been one of the greatest parts of my job, is working with the communities. I think going into the communities and keeping an open mind and being able to listen to them and hear about how they care for these places, how they connect to these places, and then translating that back into management is one of my favorite parts of my job.
Is your background in natural resources?
Kind of. I think it's a little more non-traditional. So I have a legal background. So I went to law school, but I also did my undergraduate degree in Hawaiian studies. So that mix kind of slingshotted me here and set me up for hopefully what is success in natural resource management here.
Did you grow up as a fisher person?
Yes, well, I wouldn't say a fisher person, but my family's, I can't call myself a fisherwoman, but my family's very connected to the ocean. And just coming from the native people of Hawaii, we all have very close connection to the ocean, and it's a huge part of our lives.
It is a huge part of our lives, and at the same time, it's a mystery.
Yes.
And how do you help demystify the ocean for people?
I think it's really trying to make a connection, find ways to connect people to place. I think that comes up in my job every day because we do manage these large-scale marine protected areas that people can't go to. So it's learning about these places and sharing the information that we are able to know about it by working for places like NOAA with these communities.
So you must be able to go to the monument.
I have been to one monument, yes. So the others are really hard to access and the opportunities are far and few between, but I have been able to go to Papahānaumokuākea a few times.
So in closing of our conversation today, what was the most exciting part of that?
Oh wow, the most exciting part, I would have to say, besides being seasick the entire time.
You went by ship?
Yes.
Oh my.
Yeah. The most exciting part was probably going with a small group of people onto Nihoa Island and performing cultural protocol for the group to access the island and go about their research for the day.
Well, thank you very much for your time, and I wish you much luck and enjoyment in your career, and thank you for being who you are.
Thank you.
You've had the opportunity to meet Hoku Kaʻaekuahiwi with the NOAA Fisheries. Appreciate you being with us. Today on Island Focus, you will enjoy meeting Dr. Patrick Sullivan, who is founder and CEO of OceanIt. Happy you're with us. And we are very grateful you took a time to share with us a little bit about what you do and also your vision for Hawaii.
Thanks.
So OceanIt is an organization you founded quite a while ago.
We call it a mind-to-market company. We think of things in deep science from fundamental concepts and drive it to impact humans and society. So we really cut across a lot of disciplines from aerospace to ocean sciences, biology, healthcare, information systems. We think that by putting to work science and developing the engineering solutions, we can actually make a big difference.
You also work in the community, though, with the
Right.
community. So how does that interface with the technology and all the research that you offer?
We look at it, the community as it's our ecosystem. Right? So, I mean, nothing happens in a vacuum. We have to move together. And we're at OceanIt building a tech industry, but that means everybody participates. And so we're active in the schools, we're active in the environment, we're active across the board because it's our community.
So when you say you're active in the schools, for instance, are there projects or programs or folks
Yeah,
that go into the
there's a
schools?
really cool thing we're doing. I'll try to keep it short, but it's called Altino. It's an experiment to get kids to learn coding by teaching teachers how to code with little robotic cars. We started out with non-STEM teachers, so history, social studies, and others. And the teachers are excited, so the kids are excited. And now we have a plan to educate 5,000 teachers and 200,000 students.
So you mentioned in our previous conversation about sustainability and resiliency. How does that interplay with your vision for Hawaii?
Well, the climate's changing. There have to be ways to deal with it. We can either be a victim and complain about it, or we can try to think through how to do something. And so starting with coastal areas, resilient, sustainable coastlines is how we have to think. So it has to be long-term. It has to be community-focused. So everybody wins. You have to really think about not just humans as well, but what are we doing to the ecosystem so that we're not losing the environment that we love that makes Hawaii so special.
Are there specific areas that we might recognize in the projects that OceanIt has been involved?
Gosh, 15, 20 years ago. I remember in Lanikai, we were asked to look at some of the coastal erosion. And so I tried to get everybody together and say, if we treat this as one coastal area and everybody works together and we have the state and others work as a team, we can do something.
So
but that was ignored.
Everybody meant state, county, residents,
Right.
organizations.
And getting people to work together, if we could have done that, my view is that we could have preserved the beach. It's gone, mostly gone. So I think that's a hard lesson. Now we're looking at other things today, and I think people are paying attention because that's how we're actually going to have a sustainable coastal ecosystem. And we have to look at it as stewards as well. So, there's a thing we worked on which now people are interested in. This is, 15, 20 years ago too, a roving sand mining crew. Nobody thinks that you got to have people clean up in the parks and you have trash crews. What if we create a crew that goes around and nourishes beaches just on a regular basis? It's just part of what they do. And they go out and there's sand that gets lost offshore, they bring it onshore. And this is done on a recurring basis every year. We maintain and protect the beaches.
This is one of your ongoing projects or one of the visions you have?
Well, we actually put this together as a design concept almost, over a decade ago. I think it's almost 20 years ago. But now we're talking to the resiliency group at the city, and they're very interested in new ideas.
So maybe it was premature in terms of people's willingness to change, but definitely its time has come.
The time has come, and it may manifest in a slightly different configuration, but we can do more. And people here, we know the ocean, right? People know the coast, the ocean, so we're not strangers to this. We just need the charter to take ownership to do something.
Well, thank you very much for spending a few moments and explaining not only what you do, but also what you know is possible for Hawaii.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've enjoyed conversing with Dr. Patrick Sullivan, who is founder and CEO of OceanIT. Happy you're with us. This is a very special place for you, personally.
Yes, it is. This is where a lot of the science that we do here at NOAA happens. Things like analyzing samples and really the boots on the ground work to inform everything that we do out of the Science Center at NOAA.
Now, being science-based means you do research, you share the information. And in the lab here, what kinds of information do you find out?
We can learn things like genetics, we can understand animal health, we can look at population trends and what management needs there might be can be informed by the science that we do.
So all of this equipment that we see here is operated by technicians, obviously. Do you have computer-generated instructions as well?
Yes, absolutely. And there's a lot of safety that goes into this as well. So it's important to acknowledge that there's a lot of that you're seeing as well. So it's about laboratory safety and helping make sure that the analyses that we're doing here are done in the right way.
And so how are employees, or how are you trained or selected to be here?
There's quite a variety of different backgrounds because there's so many different species that we work with. Anything ranging from a large monk seal or a humpback whale to something as small as plankton. So there's quite a big range of expertise that goes into it.
And so it must be really exciting when you discover something that you didn't know before.
Yes, it really is, and we're learning every day.
Thank you for joining me in meeting Council Member Brandon Elefante. Appreciate you being here, and you as well. I know it's a busy day.
Yes, and thank you for having me on the show today.
Well, I think your best role is representing this particular vicinity where we are at NOAA. But you have a lot of other issues that you're concerned with as well. Can you share some of them?
Yes, so what I'm really excited about in my last term of 4 years and already, it goes by real quick. I've been at the city close to 9 years now as a staffer and then into the elected official role. What I'm really excited about is actually the Pearl Harbor Bike Path, which is also known as the Pearl Harbor Historic Trail, which touches upon this vicinity here, which is a multi-use trail that I envision as something that will be a world-class trail, very similar to the Atlanta Beltline. And what it currently is now is people go out there, use it for biking or walking. But what I see it as a world-class in an effort to connect to the Arizona Memorial Visitor Center, to different destinations like coming up to here to Fort Island, all the way as far as Nanakuli and connecting the different parts of the community and integrating it. We can start to see people come out, use the trail. We can also see different types of housing opportunities along the trail, restaurants, coffee shops. So I think that's something that excites me. This is something that the community has been working on now for close to 20 years, dating back to the early 2000s, envisioning teams and getting us together. So I'd like to continue on that legacy and make sure that we see this project go forward and come to fruition.
So those of us who live on the east side of this island have our own issues. But as a council member of the whole city and county of Honolulu, there are common issues that affect all of us. In particular, what would be something that you know touches everybody?
What I know that touches everyone is traffic and transportation. as well as housing and the cost of living here that has impacted all of us living here on our island of Oʻahu. And the efforts that we're doing at the city and county of Honolulu and on the city council is looking at different key elements along those lines of looking at purchasing land for more housing or rental housing for those area median incomes for affordability, as well as looking at infrastructure and improving our roads, sewers, our water lines along, as well as we'll be having right here that's coming to this area is rail transit. So another way to kind of integrate and address some of the traffic concerns that people have living on the west, getting into town on a daily basis.
And so traffic, of course, or transportation fits all of us or touches all of us. But also now there's more people who are pedestrians and riding bikes. And to be perfectly honest with you, it's really dangerous as a driver to have to now pay attention to the bikers as much as I want to share the road.
So great question on that. And yes, there's now different modes of transportation. Pedestrians, that's always been there along with drivers and cyclists and all types. And what we're doing at the city is one thing that I advocated for, and from coming back from a walkability conference in Atlanta, is a pedestrian master plan. And what that would do is that would integrate with our Oʻahu bike plan and looking at ways in our complete streets law that we have here for all modes of transportation to make it safer, looking at street designs, reducing speedings, adding different types of control devices, maybe roundabouts or different things to make sure that all modes cross the street safely. Something that I'm working on as well is looking at urging the administration and different entities to look at barn stands crossing where all pedestrians cross at one time and everyone's all stopped.
Like in Waikiki where they're all going in different directions.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And to give the pedestrians, that sort of lead time in that. And that's sort of one measure and effort that I'm looking at. And there's all different solutions that are out there. It's a matter of addressing that. Because what we don't want to see is no more fatalities in that sense.
Right.
We really want to just have zero every year.
So as you make your last impact, what's next?
I don't know. It's truthfully and honest, and I really enjoy what I do, and I just look forward to each day coming into the office and serving the community. So I don't know what the future holds for me. However, I'm ready and looking forward to what that will be like after this last term.
Mahalo for tuning in to Island Focus and joining me in meeting Council Member Brandon Elefante. Aloha. How fortunate we are today to have the opportunity to speak with Captain Choi, who is the Executive Director of the Pacific Fleet Submarine Museum.
Well, thanks for inviting me here today.
Wonderful to see you again.
Yes, great to be back.
And you've been working very diligently with this submarine museum. Maybe you can share with the audience where we are in that.
Okay, sure. Well, in January, after years of planning, we broke ground on a $20 million renovation of our museum and grounds. It's about a 15-month project. We're in the first phase. It will wrap up in July, and funding permitting, we'll roll right into the second phase, which will be our museum. It'll add 3,000 square feet to the museum and completely redo the museum interior. So we'll have 3 galleries, World War II gallery that talks about the submarine force in World War II, a Cold War gallery that talks about the submarine's contributions to the Cold War, and then we'll look to the current submarine force and the future of the submarine force in our final gallery.
The submarines, as you've been explaining, have always had a part in peace in our, with our armed forces.
Yes, so at World War II, submarine force was only about 2% of our Navy. That small force sank 5 million tons of Japanese shipping. Over 60% of the merchant shipping that was sunk by submarines, and 30% of the Japanese warships were sunk by submarines. But that came at a tremendous price. We lost 52 of our submarines and 3,500 men.
So this museum is meant not only to show history, but also the future, as you said.
That's correct.
What is the future for submarines?
Well, our submarines are still a vital component of our Navy. The number one mission of our Navy is strategic deterrence, and the only force in the Navy that does that is our submarine force. So the Navy's in the process of replacing the Ohio-class ballistic missile submarine with the Columbia-class ballistic missile submarine. Those submarines have been in service since the early 80s, and they'll be retired over the next 10 years or so, even more than that. But we've got to have the new submarines online by about 2030 to provide the strategic deterrent that the current Ohio-class submarines do.
I would imagine submarines themselves as vehicles have changed since the time you were a captain.
Yes. Well, it's still, I mean, from World War II, it was diesel submarines that they were really just small surface ships that could submerge for brief periods of time. They couldn't run their diesel engines underwater, it had to be on the surface. So underwater, they were strictly on their battery power, which was fairly limited. Nuclear power, which was developed in the early 50s with the Nautilus being the first submarine. So the nuclear power plant, that's really the enabler that made them true submarines. So
And the future also has women on board.
That's correct. That's correct. So since about 2011, there have been women serving in our submarine force at sea. And they're starting to rise through the ranks, and they're doing quite well.
What was the most exciting part for you to be?
I was always on fast attack submarines, so we were the ones that were out looking for the other our potential enemies' forces to see what their capabilities were and to be ready to respond if we needed to do it. Those situations were always, could be very exciting and everything, but it was often, you know, we trained very hard to prepare for those missions, and often our training was much more difficult. So it really said something: if you train hard and you prepare your crew and yourself, then the real thing went very smoothly.
And it was by choice that you were there, by volunteering.
That's correct, yeah. Our submarine force has always been a volunteer force, and so to be assigned to a submarine, you have to have been a volunteer. Most adjust and do just fine, some don't, and there's another place for them.
Well, thank you for your leadership as a submarine captain in the past and now with the Pacific Fleet Submarine Museum.
Thank you very much, Lyla. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Mahalo and aloha to you for joining us in listening to my conversation with Captain Chuck Merkel, who is the Executive Director for the Pacific Fleet Submarine Museum. Aloha. Mahalo to NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, for hosting us today, and to you for tuning in to Island Focus. I'm Lyla Berg. Aloha and malama pono. Take care of each other. See you soon.